Hello, everyone. Welcome to Genealogy Adventures Live. I'm Brian Sheffy,
And I'm Danya Williams. Hello, hello, hello.
and hope you guys are all enjoying your Sunday. And thank you for joining us this week.
Yes, yes. So this week we're going to go into something that we haven't done before, and this is one of our promises actually that Brian and I gave, because we wanted to make sure that everybody would always get a word in, be able to say something, talk about what they're going through. So we've had the upper echelons of genealogists on our show. So now we're going to work with someone who's new, and we're going to work with a new person. Yes, and her name is Nicole Jackson. Nicole contacted me on Ancestry because no, not on Ancestry, on Facebook, because she was interested in researching, and she wanted to get involved and get into it. And even more so, she wanted to know more about it becoming a career for her. So guys, please welcome Miss Nicole Jackson.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Brian, I'm gonna go ahead because I gotta send this out.
Okay.
So so you talk to her.
So one of the ways we like to open up the show, Nicole, is by asking, what was it about genealogy that hooked you? How did you get into it?
All right. So I am a graduate of University of Maryland. I originally went to Hampton. So hey, Pirates. I went to Hampton and ended up finishing an African American Studies degree at University of Maryland. I have always been interested in my family name, which is Revis, Revis. Have a deep sense of history and African American culture. I also have Sankofa actually tatted on me, as I do believe in that griot system. I do believe in finding out your past in order to move forward. In addition, my mom passed from cancer, so I wanted to get more research on just the family lineage and things that are just in DNA. And my cousin did some research on our family tree, and I just wanted to go further and further. And so here I am.
Yay!
Hey,
Yeah.
welcome to the Genealogy Club. So I guess because this is about the trials and tribulations of being a new genealogist, what was kind of one of the first things that you kind of struggled with or may have tripped you up or you were unsure of?
Well, we're African American, and trying to find pieces of our history is hard. I have gotten all the way back to the plantation, thankfully, on where we didn't begin, but I guess one of the passages of my ancestral plane was on that plantation. But I can't get any further, or I guess any further backwards from 1816. It's like the plantation where my family landed on, which is Stagville in North Carolina. Um, they maintain really good records, but we were um, owned by a family previously who just didn't maintain good records.
Right.
And I'm stuck in 1816. Don't know where we were before that.
Mhm. So out of curiosity, 1816, what North Carolina county is that?
So it's Raleigh. Specifically, we were in Fish Dam. And actually, no, it's Wake County.
Okay.
Wake County. Yeah.
Got it. So you're saying that there's a lack of records. I mean, for instance, were the enslavers, were they dying intestate? Were they dying without a will?
So they weren't dying without a will. It's just, I guess, from what the plantation is, because the plantation has helped us tremendously on finding a lot of the records
Mhm.
and the archives, of course. But it just seems as though the whoever owned us before, the Benahan Cameron family, just didn't maintain records. They didn't write things down, or either that or they were destroyed. I don't know what happened. But right now, the plantation is unable to locate any further information before 1816. They're still digging. They did find out that we were from Fish Dam. They have actually found actual like bricks and things that were left behind, where maybe if they look under the swamp at this point, because it is swampland, they can find, more digs. But right now, we can't get any further than 1816.
Okay.
Okay.
One thing that I might be able to suggest is for that generation of that family,
Mhm.
see if the enslaver's children or the recipients of his bequest, his heirs, um, did litigation. See if they were fighting each other in court.
Yeah,
Okay.
court
Okay.
records.
Court records. Okay.
That's what I was gonna say to you about Mordecai, but because you said it was later on, but you still may want to get an idea of looking at his actual financials. You should be able to do that. He probably
Okay.
kept a record of his financials and how he paid out and what he did as far as paying them to rent your enslaved ancestors. So
Okay.
that's money that's also follow the money. That's what it is.
All of
Right. Right. Because that's
Yeah, follow
and
the money.
if you have details about that enslaver's parents, the previous generation,
yeah.
there might be clues within their probate records for like the older generation of your family.
Okay.
So those
Okay.
are so that's good. I mean that is a
Yeah.
classic, typical stumbling block and barrier for specifically African American researchers. But I
Exactly.
would also say for white researchers who also have ancestors who are poorly documented, living in very remote areas. So it's a common thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
So just very quickly, we have our seasoned people, and they are already shooting out info for you.
Awesome.
So Shelly Murphy is saying, did the slave holder sell any of the slaves or gift any of the children? So that was something that you and I were talking about. So why don't you go into that real quick?
Right. So so my family, like I said, is from the Stagville plantation, 1816 on. So I have names of all of my ancestors dating back to 1816. Gilly, who was the who gave birth to Nimi, who gave birth to Sam, who gave birth to John, and then so on to my grandfather, and now to me. We were rented out at one point to the Mordecai family, G.W. Mordecai, but we were only hired out for a year and then came directly back to that same plantation and maintained there until 1880, when we moved to LaGrange, North Carolina. So the family was never sold off of that plantation. They never left. They maintained the family and just stayed there until after emancipation.
so another thing to factor in as well is the surname for your enslaved ancestor that you trace back to that 1816 plantation.
Mhm.
What was their family
So
surname?
here is the tricky part. This is also a part where things get lost in translation. So my family name is Revis, Revis.
Mhm.
Um, so prior to emancipation, we were apparently Mordecais because we were rented out to the Mordecai family. But we were only rented out for a year, came back to the Cameroon family, was never named after them. And we kept the Mordecai name up until 1870. And in the 1880 census, all of a sudden we changed our name to Revis. Don't know why. Stagville Plantation says that there was a Revis family that lived directly next to that Stagville Plantation,
Mhm.
who of course were white and owners, but there's really not much information on them. I can't find anything. I have not gone to the archives in North Carolina because I am based in DC. So that's something that I definitely plan on doing. But yeah.
Okay, well, one thing you may have done this already, but that I would also suggest is looking for anyone with those older names, like the Mordecai name,
Mhm.
in
Yeah,
Wake
that might be family somewhere.
because what I'm thinking is basically enslavers got enslaved people through two routes. If you're a man, you're getting it from you're getting it from your parents. It doesn't matter if you're male or female, you're still getting them from your parents. But they're also called their dower slaves or dowry slaves.
Dowry slaves. Okay.
Women marrying male enslavers who also come from enslaving families are bringing their own enslaved people. That's one of the few things that women could actually own in their own right. So those were their enslaved people. So
Okay.
your connection might not actually be through the male enslaver, it may be through the female enslaver. So
Okay.
just to keep an eye out for that Mordecai name. And I don't, did you say it was Cowan? Was the other one?
G.W. Mordecai. So,
Yeah.
apparently my great 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 grandparents lived on the same plantation, lived on the bunk next to each other, and married. And again, they just maintained on throughout there. So yeah, I'll definitely look into the Mordecai family, but it was almost as if after emancipation in 1870 they kept the name Mordecai, but in 1880, out of nowhere, we're just going to be Revis.
Well, here's another question. Have you done a DNA test?
So I have not. I have one. I've been a little skeptical about doing it. My grandmother did one. My aunt has done one. I'm going to do one now. And I'm really interested in that because there is an old, I guess, griot story in my family that we're from Haiti. The name Revis is French, so it's not surprising. Um, that came from my great uncle, who actually just passed. I got some oral history from him. He says that his pappy, who would be his grandfather, was from Haiti. But now that I'm going back through, all
You're
the
not seeing it.
I'm not seeing that. So I'm wondering if that came from maybe his great grandfather, because that would point me back, further back. But at this point, I'm not seeing that. So I'm really excited on taking that test to just see, if I can find anything that relates back to Haiti.
Because I asked that for kind of a roundabout reason. And I'm aware of an enslaving Mordecai family in Halifax and Warren in North Carolina who were Sephardic Jews.
Yeah,
So
G.W. Mordecai. Exactly. Yep.
So I was going to ask you if you had done a DNA test, was there any trace Sephardic Jewish shown?
Yeah. So I've visited the Mordecai. That's actually how I found everything. So my family, my cousin, who I was explaining to Danya, had done a very detailed family tree back to my great grandfather, and found the census record. So that was also helpful. And it said Mordecai. So years had passed on. I guess things have advanced on the internet. I'm just Googling one day. I found the Mordecai plantation. I know we're from North Carolina. Okay, let's go to Mordecai plantation. I get there. They were looking into some information, but didn't really have all of the pieces, pointing to our family. But they did some research and dated us back to the Stagville plantation, which is how I got there. Which is how they found out that they owned us, at least for that year, while they rented out my great grandfather to the railroad that was being built, the North Carolina Railroad. So I've got that information.
Okay, well, go ahead, Brian, and then I'm gonna get on here again.
Okay.
Because we got a lot of stuff.
Okay, just one quick question. Naming conventions in a family can also unlock a lot of clues about earlier lines. So have you noticed any kind of family naming patterns within your research? Like really common first names?
So Sam seems to be a common name, but it's only twice over.
Oh.
So no, we have a Gilly, a Nimi, and then I can see all of Nimi's children and of course all of Gilly's children, but none of them are really the same outside of Sam. Sam seems to be the only repeating name.
Okay.
What about with your white family, with the enslavers? Do you see any repeating names in that?
I haven't seen any repeating names with that, but again, we stayed on the same. We were owned by the Benahans, who were married to a Cameron. Married to a Cameron. So the marriage is what links us to staying on that same plantation. So Benahan, Cameron, Mordecai, back to Cameron. That's it.
I think that you might have missed it. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because I know that for me, and I know a lot of other people, like I think back to when I first started researching, there was so much stuff that I didn't even think to pay attention to, like the naming pattern that Brian was talking about, or even the fact that those names were actually connecting to some of the people in the white lines. So, for example, have you researched the white people in?
I have not done any research on them.
So that's my point. You actually might be missing something in doing that. Because in order for you to find your family, in order for you to get back beyond 1816, you're gonna have to start digging into that white line, those people that did enslave them. That's definite.
I will say, because they were so well known in North Carolina, I have gone through a few archives. I've really tried to pay attention to, again, like you were mentioning, the financial papers. But another big thing that is really hard for us newbies is trying to cipher through their handwriting.
Yeah.
I'm actually transcribing now for somebody.
Yeah. So, thankfully Gilly is, if it's in cursive, you can kind of make out what it is. So
but at some point it all just kind of goes into
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I may have a little clue for you. If Gilly turns out to be short for Gilliland, it's an odd name, but it's actually a mixture of Scottish and Irish, but mostly Scottish. Gillilands were a big enslaving Scottish American family in Virginia, mostly in Southwest, almost just over the line of North Carolina. And I noticed that in my enslaved lines there's Gillilands and there's also a family called Shield. They married Camerons back in Southwest Virginia.
Okay.
And I noticed that on my enslaved line, every once in a while, there's a boy who will be called Gilly, or that was usually short for Gilliland.
Okay. So yesterday I was talking to my cousin. She posted something. There's something going on now on Instagram. Actor talked about Haiti and its dowry with Citibank and France. And so she posted this blurb about Haiti and went on to another post to discuss our family lineage. And, I came back to her with all the history that I've found so far that my cousin has found. Say, I'm really not sure how, all of this is entangled into Haiti. So I did some research yesterday and I did see that the Benahans originally were from Virginia, which goes back to what you were just saying.
So that everything that you guys are saying is a good segue into this group because they are coming in. So first and foremost, there's an attack on you by Mr. James Morgan III. He said he closed his video when she said she went to Hampton because he's Howard University, the real HU. So I wanted to get that.
Oh no, I hope I was me.
So yeah, you got all that going on, just to let you know, but you'll see all that later. But to go into
love.
Yes, much love. Spell the last name slowly.
Revis.
Okay.
That's the original spelling, but there are 3 different spellings apparently.
Okay, what are they?
Reavies and Reavs. No, Reavis.
Okay. So some of the people are telling you to check repositories, check Freedman Bank records if you have not done that yet. Then Miss Shelley Murphy is a great resource, and she may be somebody that you're going to end up talking to. The reason why I'm saying that is because I think Shelley is the one that's saying most of the stuff up here right now. Love her. She's our cousin. So You got people talking about multiple name changes, certain things that we've already discussed, but I want to get to Shelly. She was saying, oh no, this is Bernice, another great resource for you. She said, read A Mind to Stay White Plantation, Black Homeland by Sidney Nathan. She said the Camerons are in that book.
Okay, let me write that down. A Mind to Stay White Plantation by who?
Sidney Nathan.
Okay.
She said the Camerons are in that book, and she did a blog. She's also does podcasts as like we do. Hers is over video, and she does one with that. So I'll make sure that you will have her information.
Awesome. Thank you.
For Bernice. Bernice is a very good person. Shelly said you're going to end up coming back into Virginia. She says you are not a newbie, first and foremost, because she said you have gotten to your enslaved ancestors. I agree with her. Because once you dig into them ancestors, the enslaved ones, you are no longer new. Okay,
yeah.
Those things are different, but that's a whole nother monster.
Yeah.
She said you might be new to researching the 19th century, so she wanted to let you know you're no longer a newbie. She said, and then Bernice wanted to let you know that the Benahans were also in that book. Bernice actually traveled over, I think it was to Barbados, and she saw a lot of different names. One of the names she saw was one of my family names as well. So Bernice is definitely somebody that, you know, when you get into these groups there, you can ask them questions. Make sure you're in all of the Facebook groups, all of them, as many of them as possible. And then also start looking for Facebook groups that are directly connected to your to where your family is coming from, because they exist, and a lot of people don't realize that they actually exist.
Oh my God, there's so many white relatives in North Carolina that is just ridiculous. I don't even know where to start.
And let me see. So then, yes, this is another one. Look for news articles and obituaries from the early 1900s to get a sense for how the surnames were being spelled and work backwards in newspapers.com. That was a suggestion by E.R. Shipp. And Bernice has put the link of the book in here. So
awesome. Okay.
Yeah, she says she's going back to Barbados too.
Well,
but your name, according to Shelly, you're going to end up going into Virginia for certain. And the reason why is because North Carolina was founded by Virginians.
Right.
Pretty much.
So with that being said, you're headed right back to Virginia. You're going straight to Virginia. Just know that, because North Carolina, I was just talking to my cousin Yolanda today, and we were talking about North and South Carolina and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was saying, because if you Google it, it will tell you North Carolina founded by Virginians, and that's all it says. It just says Virginians. So that's you're definitely going back there.
Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah, it is. So what other I guess my question is, what's one of the worst things that you found that you felt like you know really had to deal with, and how did you cope with it?
So by trade right now, I am in social work. I am getting my master's in counseling psychology. So that's another kind of way I'm dealing with all of this. I got, like I said, my BA in African American Studies. I really wanted to do something geared towards finding my ancestors, hence me contacting you. So counseling psychology kind of links into all of that, and just trying to stay sane while you're, digging up all of this on your family and DNA. So probably the most gut-wrenching document I have found so far. I didn't really find that the Stagville Plantation kind of gifted this document to the family. But it had Gilly's name, who would be my great, 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 great grandmother. It had her name and her daughter's name listed and how much they were sold on the plantation for. So you can see that, in 1816, she was worth $300. And just kind of looking at that number and thinking of, what I do with $300 today, like, and just putting a price on life was hard.
You're still dealing with it.
Yeah, that was hard.
I can see you're still dealing with it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I thought going back to the plantation, and standing in those steps and walking, that farmland was going to be gut wrenching. I also thought when I went back I've gone to Ghana, and I thought going to Ghana and going through the trail the slaves walked where they took their last bath.
The doors of no return.
So I went to the doors of no return. That didn't shake me up as much as walking the trail of the last bath. Before they got on the boat to go to the actual fortress. But I thought all of that was going to be way worse than receiving that document. But after I got that document, that was hard.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever really kind of shake that off. I think you get better at dealing with it and in the moment, because you have to do the work. So you just
right.
I shouldn't say that generally, but for me, I know I have to do the work. I put my feelings to one side, do what I have to do, and then kind of get into my feelings and kind of have to shake it off.
Right.
At that point. But and I think Donnie will probably flip on the other side of what I'm going to say, to her viewpoint. The ancestors speak to us. When we're in those moments, whether we realize, whether we actually can hear them or feel them.
Exactly.
They're telling us.
Yeah.
We're feeling their pain, and we're feeling what they went through and endured.
Exactly. I have never prayed so hard or just been like so clear-headed than when I was sitting on the beach looking at the fortress in Ghana. Like I was just so in tune with myself and my feelings and why I was there, and just everything. It was as if they were dancing across my feet, just like getting into my body, into my soul, just telling me like, this is okay. This is what you're supposed to do. Let's move forward.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, like Brian, I am actually different. And because when I first started doing my research, and I wrote this in my book, I actually said that I prepared myself. And if there was ever a moment where a person can become too prepared, I was that person. I got no feeling. When I mean, literally, I didn't really get a feeling when I first got that email telling me that my great-great-grandmother was a slave. I didn't get any feeling when I saw how much she was worth, which was a whole hell of a lot. I didn't get, I didn't get any feeling. I was expecting it, and that was that, and that's all it was. Now, on what Brian was saying and the ancestors talking to you, she didn't appreciate that. She didn't appreciate that at all. So she was like, okay, so I'm gonna make you, really understand where I'm coming from. And she started pointing to different things for me to read. And I started reading all this different stuff and looking at all these different things. But when she showed me who her slave master actually was, I was blown by that, because this was somebody in history. So when we as African Americans sit in school and we're listening to the history lessons that's going around, and we're thinking, okay, this don't have nothing to do with us. Guess what? It really actually had something to do with me, and I had no idea that it did. So I can't sit here and say, I was talking to one of our other cousins, and she was saying, yeah, they don't teach our history. They don't do this. They don't teach us about us. And I'm like, yes, they do.
Oh, it's all.
I said, they just leave you out.
Yeah.
And I said, they just leave you out. They teach you about you. I said, because that man was my uncle. He was a great uncle or great uncle, whatever he was. But the thing that, even though that dug into me, the thing that dug into me the most was when I learned how much she was worth and what it actually meant. So her worth was $1,205.
Wow.
All by herself.
Wow.
She was a breeder.
Ah.
And it was at that moment when I learned, I was like, oh, oh. And I was like, wow. So, and it had to sit, it had to really sit on me. She came in all areas. Martha is not a game, and she just came in all directions, like, yeah, look at this, read this, look at what happened to this young lady, look at what happened, this, look at this, learn about this, these are these types of women, this is that, this is how much I was worth, this is who I am.
Okay.
So now I know that there are children out there that I might never find,
right,
because her kids were taken, sold, never to be seen again. And now that stuff sits on me all day, every day.
Right. Yeah.
Where my flip side was going to see Sally Hemings' room, and my brother, my sister, and I, it was a long car journey to get to Monticello. We're kind of, we tried to kind of intellectualize how we were going to feel about our relationship to her, and then her relationship within that household. And we were kind of all right until we were shown her room. And then I won't say I made the mistake. It was an impromptu thing for me to put my hand on the dirt floor. That was the floor that she walked on. That was it for me. That was it for me for the rest of the day. I just went into a whole trip. But I'm glad that I did it in a way, even though it just sent me on a spiral for the whole rest of the day. Just to kind of feel that energy and hear what I was supposed to hear.
Yeah.
So the other question that I wanted to ask you was, let's face it, whether you're an experienced genealogist, intermediate, or fairly new to it, there are so many different records. They are scattered everywhere. It is really tough trying to learn about not only the kind of records that you need, but understanding how to search to find them. What kind of a process was that for you? Just kind of grappling with the diversity of records, finding out where they were housed.
So I've been using Ancestry.com and going through birth certificates and death certificates. Those always get me, the death certificates, because again, I mentioned that my mom passed from breast cancer. So just seeing, what my great grandmother passed from, and where does cancer kind of lean into our family, or does it? Is it just a regional type thing, or what is it? But I love looking at the records. I mean, that was my major, African American Studies. I wanted to be an archaeologist, so I love digging through and sifting through all sorts of records. So yeah.
But again, not the easiest things to start tracking down to figure out where they are. Because again, North Carolina, that off the top of my head, I can think about 7 different North Carolina state archives and repositories. Donnie and I researching our ancestor Moses Williams, who spent part of his life in North Carolina. That was like 7 different repositories. God only knows how many books.
Yeah.
Google
books everywhere.
Books, archives, archive.org.
Medical books. He's literally just like everything. And he had 45 kids, and I don't know why. To this point, to this day, I don't know why he's in the medical book. I think the women should be in, but for whatever reason, he's the one that's in the medical book. But he's the one. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But so let me go back to the thing. So Shelly said, in her words, "Girl, there is no such thing as being sane. This is an addiction."
It is. It is. I
She
can get
said,
about the most random things now. Like, oh, I didn't think about this. Let me look up this slave ship. Like, let me just
wake up in the middle of the night. You'd be like, oh, I gotta get this. But
exactly.
she said, it's going to be hard. You will see more. Just hang in there. That is why you have to tell the story. She said she found one at $300.50. She said that sent her crying like a baby. She couldn't get over the 50 cents. Then you have people who talks about that, how they found their ancestors and how their ancestors guided them and in researching the path, and you're going to go through all of that. Bernice says, wait until you meet the descendants of the slave owners. So my question is, have you done it yet?
Ooh, I
She said
have.
reality is going to hit you then.
That is, I'm sure it will. I will say when I went onto the Stagville plantation, well, so two occasions. I went onto the GW Mordecai plantation first because, again, our name was Mordecai before it was Revitz. I called ahead of time. I said, I think my family was at some point a slave on, this property. Like to come and look at it. So they said, okay. I came, they were very welcoming and everything, but this is all, Caucasians who are interested in preserving the history and, they are looking into the African American history and are, paying homage to us, but it's still a different feeling. So it was weird talking to them about my family's history when I'm just like, my family worked this plantation. Like they didn't own it. They worked blood, sweat, tears. This
That's
is
because they haven't connected it yet in their own mind.
exactly. There was just
they haven't connected it.
the empathy was there, but they couldn't feel what I was feeling.
Right.
And even when I went to the Stagville plantation, that was a different experience because they really do really, really want to help. And it's sad. It's kind of a side note, but it's sad because with, everything going on in the times, the Black Lives Matter movement, um, a piece of the big house there was burned.
Mm.
Um, so, I'm hoping that nothing happens to that place, mainly because these are people who are really trying to help the descendants. They're actually trying to put a memorial together for a lot of the descendants who have traced their history back. But
Wow.
yeah, like just going back and talking to them and telling our story, telling them how, we have traced our history back to here, it's still like, you still don't get it. Like, this
Yeah.
is not where we're from, but this is a part of my history. Like this is
Right.
this random thing. Like this is deeper than that.
Yeah. I have a lady by the name of Judith Hughes who gave a wonderful, this is something else. So I'm definitely going to tag you on this so you can go through these because there's a lot of stuff that I'm not able to read, just reading some of it. But Judith Hughes says there's a wonderful program run by two North Carolina professional researchers at the North Carolina Archives each year. It is called Tar Heel Discoveries. She said also check the university libraries in the area. They often have family connections that have early documents. And that is very true.
Uh, Dolores Williams on Facebook. What's the name of her Facebook? Because she's like one of the queens of North Carolina African American research.
I'll find out.
Nicole, I promise I will find out the name of her
Perfect.
Facebook group
Thank you.
and I will share that with you.
Thank you.
She is a phenomenal resource for North
Okay.
Carolina. Mhm.
Awesome.
Let's see here. They want to make sure that you're visiting cemeteries. Have you done that yet?
Yep. So I have been calling cemeteries. We have a family cemetery where my great grandfather was buried and so forth, but nothing prior to that. So I have started to call around to the local cemeteries and do some research on cemeteries that are no longer there, just to see if the name Revis pops up
Okay.
in all of its spellings.
Bernice says that you should connect with Michael Williams because he is a big Skaggsville Enslaved researcher, and he's on Facebook as well.
Michael Williams. Okay.
So Michael Williams is his name.
Oh, that Facebook group is called I Found My Enslaved Ancestors.
Ancestors. Yeah.
That's the one.
Okay.
So we'll definitely share all of that with you as well. We have one person who actually says she loves this. She says, I haven't gotten to the point of finding the enslavers of my family because I've hit a brick wall trying to find my father. So this is, that's what I was trying to tell you. This is why we, got you on, because sometimes you'll may be able to help someone who's not as advanced as you, but you're still where you are, So yeah, that is awesome. But you, oh God, the question just left my head. I hate when that happens. I'm getting old. Did you know? God.
Just happy to know there's that community out there. Like, Don, you and I were talking about this before when I first contacted you, that, it just seems like Henry Louis Gates is the end all be all, but he's not. There are so many more genealogists out there who are African Americans who are trying to do work that's important out there. And I think it's important that it's just pushed, to the max, and it's just not.
And I'm glad you said that, because that's where my question was going, because you want to know more about a career in this. So I want to lead into that and you getting into the career. What is it that you want to do, as far like like, for example, we have one cousin named Carolyn who does something called reparational genealogy. So basically she goes and she will do genealogy for any African American. She's going to do it, and it's for free.
Nice.
That, because she's like, you kept your history. Now it's time for us to give it back.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's in so many words, that's how she does that. So do you have a direction that you want to go as far as genealogy is concerned?
I just want stories to be told. By heart, I am a writer. I started off at Hampton as a journalism major. And I am an avid writer. So I just want the stories to be told, mine, theirs, whoever it wants to dig deeper into this. I want those stories to be told. My husband is in film. That's one of the reasons why we kind of got together. I was an intern for him because I wanted to do documentaries on African American studies. So eventually I would like to write, something that kind of dives into the new genealogists, trying to find the family and just going back and telling those stories.
Everyone has their different emphasis. I mean, Donnie is doing a wonderful job researching what's called the Old 96 in South Carolina, in Edgefield in particular, because that really is one of that one part of the South Carolina colony really influenced American history.
Without a doubt.
A lot of that's been untold, and that's Donia's love and one of her focuses of research. Mine is kind of back in Virginia, in Jamestown. I want to tell the true and kind of multi-layered, complicated early history of the Virginia colony between Native Americans, Europeans, and Africans. How they were all mixing, and how that knowledge seems to have been lost.
Yeah, education is big. I think, for example, I think that because we don't know about our own families, we weren't able to sit in class and say, oh, okay, I see me, because they kept me out of it. Even though, guess what? I was right there. Like, that was the craziest part for me, to be able to find that particular picture that was in so many history books. And when I tell you, my great-great-grandmother guided me to that one particular person, because she was owned by 3 people. And she was owned by the father, the son, and then a possible cousin.
Okay.
And so when you're doing your research, you're going to automatically do either the first one or the last one. You damn sure ain't going to start in the middle.
Right.
You won't do that. But that's what she made me do. That was the first. I mean, I literally just said, boom, okay, let me go and put in Preston's name. Because I was like, who is this? And I just Googled Preston Brooks, and there was the picture of Preston Brooks and him beating Charles Sumner with a cane. And I was like, wait a minute, I know this picture. Hold up. And I looked again, and I'm like, get out. This is the picture in history books. This is Charles Sumner. This is the abolitionist that everybody learns about in school. Everybody learns about this abolitionist. No one learns about the man who actually did the overall beating. They just said he was beat. I don't remember to this day, and I could be wrong, but I don't remember them saying his name in school. It was more so about Charles Sumner, and that was it. So to see that and look, and I'm like, well, dang, I was sitting in school all this time thinking that, my history's not being told. Well, guess what? This was my first introduction to African American history, quote unquote, and American history, quote unquote, being put together. And I'm like, oh, so it's no difference. And I started to get that more and more and more, and started to learn we can't be without the other. We can't, one of us, this had to happen for this to happen. Exactly. And you can't keep that out. So the more I started learning that, the more I started, digging in and just really learning more and more about South Carolina and Edgefield and Abbeville and the old 96 and how they played such an unbelievable role in the reconstruction of America. Because we got to realize, after the Civil War ended, America had to start over again in so many words. And they were trying to make it fit for everybody now. And because they were trying to make it fit for everybody, guess where a lot of that stuff came from? It was the old 96. These people were making all of these things. And then the guy that we're going to talk to next week, he actually talks about the compromise of 1877, which stopped the Reconstruction period. So, and where did it happen? South Carolina, right there in that area of Edgecombe, so I'm like, I knew it. I knew this place was something special, and people need to know that. It's crazy, but
because the kind of genealogists that we are, we're also public historians. And you gave a great example about history class in your school. My school system in Connecticut, I grew up, the first time I had learned that there were free people of color in America, or the American colonies, I think I was 32. I think it was 32 years old before I was like, because basically all we were ever told was Black people were slaves. And that was, there was no other history attached to it. Or like when we had Chief Lizondo on the show, saying that, in terms of South Carolina, the division was, if you weren't white, you were Black. It didn't matter if you were in like subcontinental Indian, Middle Eastern, Mongolian. It didn't matter. If you weren't white, you were Black.
And it made sense so much, because if you ever watched the 50 Cent when he did his DNA on VH1, had you seen that? Okay, well, you can always Google it. But there was a lady who told him that he didn't know his history because she was talking about the Mongolians. And he's looking at her cross-eyed like, chick, I ain't no Mongolian. He just looked at her. She was like, she said, yeah, see, you don't know your history. But when the chief came on and made that comment, I was like, oh, wow. This makes sense now. Now I see why this was like that, because if you weren't white, then you were Black. So, and that was it. It didn't matter anything else. So yeah, that was amazing what he said. But there are a lot of people. Shelley said for you to contact Renette Yarborough Sanders. That's another person. She does a talk on Saturdays about North Carolina. Okay. So we're gonna get you, definitely try to get you into contact with her.
Okay.
And let me see.
I do want to give a big nod to DCPS, because like you guys were saying, just coming up, you weren't privy to that information or had to do a lot of reading in between the lines. Growing up in DC public schools for me was the complete opposite. I was in a school that was primarily African American in the 80s. And instead of singing the national anthem, no, we sang the Black national anthem.
Wow.
I grew up saying the Black Panther 10-point program. Like I grew up reading, the first book I read was The Miseducation of the Negro. So I grew up having that sense of pride, but then also being able to read in between the lines of where my history lived in those books, and having teachers say, okay, now let's dissect this. So that's a big nod to DCPS and a lot of the teachers that, I was raised by in the 80s, because they
And I mean,
definitely.
you're definitely right about that, because I mean, I was here up until 84 and I was in a Catholic school, and I learned more about African American history with them than I did when I moved to Virginia Beach.
Mm.
And I was then in a mixed school. I was pretty much, it was mixed at that point. But the history changed so much. And that was another thing. Who was it? Brian, who were we? I think you and I were talking to someone, and we were talking about how the education system and how most of the books are done in Texas. So Texas, or was it something on Loki's thing?
No, it was one of our really early shows.
Yeah, how the history books, they're talking about how those history books, they rewrite. That was Tim Wise. And they rewrite, I think that's one of my skits. And they rewrite the history to make it fit what they wanted to say. So for example, like when in Texas and they did that crap about enslaved people, made it look like they were paid.
They called them servants.
They called them
Servants.
Yeah, like they were paid. And I'm looking at it, and when I tell you I got so heated from that I sent so many messages to them. I got a response back saying, well, we understand, we apologize, and then also stating how they were going to make the changes online. And I'm like, okay, you can make the changes on your online book, but you need to take that crap out of the that you got in school systems and start over again, because that's wrong. Mm-hmm. That didn't happen. So now we have history books that actually give that perception of they got paid. Mm-hmm. My great-great-grandmother did not get paid. Mm-hmm. And that's all that I can look at. My great-great-grandmother did not get paid. She's the one that made me see all this stuff. So now that I see this stuff, I have to protect her. Right. And that's how I look at it. I have to protect her. And you're not doing your part. And this is wrong. So yeah, it's just amazing.
Being a voice. That is the exciting part to the piece, just being the voice.
Right.
Those who didn't have that opportunity.
Right. They've been silent so long. That's enough of that. It's enough of them being silent. I don't have time. And I love it when somebody come to me and tell me, oh, why are you bringing up the past, blah, blah, this, that, and the third. I shut one guy down and I said, do you talk about your grandparents? Do your children know their grandparents or their great grandparents? No, they don't know them. I'm just like, do you talk about them? Do you tell them about them and things like that? And it's like, of course I do that. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm like, well, I'm talking about my family. Mm-hmm. What else can you say? Mm-hmm. There's absolutely nothing else. And he didn't say anything else because he couldn't. Because just because my great-great-grandmother was a slave doesn't say that it is nowhere in there that says that I can't talk about her. Right. Nothing. I can teach. I can tell my children, well, this was your great-great-great-grandma. This was your 3 times great-grandmother. This is what she went through, blah, blah, blah. There is absolutely no difference in that than you talking about your great-parents, your great-grandparents, and telling them and explaining to your children what they did. Yeah. So, wow, the show is almost over.
It is. And I just lost it. There was I just saw a really good question and I can't find it again.
Someone said it's also been said that our family, oh, I think this is someone who's related to you. Karen Revis, R-E-V-I-S. Okay.
Yeah.
She said, it's also been said that our family has Native Americans in our family. Can you speak about that?
Yes. So that is our brown side, not our Revis side though. So my great grandparents, my great grandfather, John Revis, married Nanny Brown, who is from Virginia. And Nanny apparently has a lot of Native American, I think it's Navajo, in her family. And actually, to that effect, on the brown side, I follow someone on ancestry.com who has dated that side all the way back to the American Revolution, and I think a little bit before that. So the brown side has got it down pat. I haven't been able to speak with this man yet. I keep losing him. I don't know why, but he is on ancestry.com, which has been helpful. And again, that's just been a godsend too, just, being linked to people and, just
Right.
typing the name and saying, okay, how do
Well,
I know you? Are you my cousin? Like, for real? I don't know you.
well,
you.
I'm
But
gonna say,
okay.
if your Browns came from either Verina in Henrico County, Virginia, or Charles City County,
Mhm.
we're
Me and
gonna
my
be.
big family.
They're gonna. I mean, I know Brown is such a hugely common name, but I do have two Brown Native American, European, African ancestral lines. So one's coming out of Verina in Henrico County, and the other one's coming out of Charles City County.
Okay. Okay. I haven't done as much research on the brown side, mainly because the guy, I mean, he basically laid it out on Ancestry. But Revis has always just been that name. I'm just like, ooh, I gotta know more about y'all.
And it's your brick wall. It's
Yeah.
like
My
you want to smash through that.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Nicole, for
you.
for being on the show
Thank
and giving us just as far as the just briefly, as far as getting in it, like I said to you before,
you.
there is, and I'll have to, that's with Brenda Garrett. She did a post about possible what am I saying? She did a post about possible scholarships
Right.
that are available,
Yes.
and as far as becoming a genealogist. And then there's another person, her name is, just slipped my mind, but I will definitely get with you on that to try to get that information to you so they can talk to you in depth a little more. I believe Bernice put names out there like Linda Bug. That's another person that you can look at. And Shelley Murphy and Bernice, both of them are good people to talk to about as far as going into and making it a possible career for you, because it's there, and it's awesome, and we need more African Americans doing it.
Yes.
It's like you said, it's not just Henry Louis Gates, and I have my issues with him.
Well, I mean, my kind of 2 cents on this one is we are not a monolithic people. Even though many of our, enslaved African descended ancestors shared the same kind of trials and tribulations,
Mhm.
they had different experiences
Right.
that literally ran the gamut. Not all of them worked on great, huge, grand plantations. If
Exactly.
anything, the majority of both my mother and my father's family that were enslaved worked on very small farms. And
Right.
actually, their enslavers were right out there working the fields with them. They were literally
Mhm.
extra hands to get that job done. But then we have, the James Henry Hammonds and the Brooks family and, the big families in South Carolina who did have those stereotypical huge, plantation houses with thousands of acres and hundreds, if not thousands of enslaved souls. Some of our ancestors were enslaved by Native Americans, like Angela Walton Raji's, her area of research, in the Midwest. That was probably a completely different enslavement experience
Mm-hmm.
than other parts of the country.
Right.
As Donnie has said, as many voices as possible, everyone kind of contributing and supporting each other and really getting that kind of history and that knowledge out there. To me, that's what's really important.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Well, thank you again for being on the show. It is 5:00, and we would like to thank everybody for definitely tuning in. We got a good crowd out here, a lot of questions answered, things of that nature. I definitely will be tagging you on it. So if you missed anything, some links in there for you as well. Brian, you want to?
I'm going to quickly say our guest next week is a gentleman called Loki Mulholland, and he has a documentary called The Uncomfortable Truth. Is that on Amazon Prime? Donna?
Amazon Prime, yes.
I highly recommend watching it. It's called The Uncomfortable Truth, Loki Mulholland. And a lot of it is about, that is the one that's about his mother who was a freedom fighter.
No.
Oh, no.
So the one about his mom is The Ordinary Hero. There are 3. Yes. We're going to give out homework for you guys for this week because y'all got to get on top of this and look at his stuff and get ready and be prepared. He's awesome.
He is.
Yes. So
without further ado, thank you so much for sharing part of your Sunday with us. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Donya Williams. You guys have a great day.
And thank you, Nicole. See you next week.
Thank you.